and welcome along to another Shearer Smokes. And you join me here in the Shearer Cigar Lounge. Now the reason for this little video today is an idea that was put into my head by a good friend of mine, Smoky Dan, who left a comment on my previous video about how you could see me in a armchair next to a log fire, possibly telling a Scottish tale. So I have the armchair. I've done the best I can for a log fire. And as for Scottish tale, I have this book which has been in my possession for a number of years now. In fact, the original price was £2.25. That tells you how long ago it was I bought it. Fascinating little book. It's made up of newspaper articles and stories from court papers of the time. The time period is the 17 and 1800s and gives us a great insight into how life would have been in those times in the city of Glasgow. The book itself breaks down into different subjects: health and welfare, the weather, eating habits, and the one that kind of caught my imagination as a youngster, villainy and the law. And of course, in those times, 1800s, public whippings and executions were still quite prominent. And just to give you an example, there's an article here from the Glasgow Mercury, dated the 14th of April 1785. Yesterday, John Johnson, convicted of theft, was agreeable to a sentence of the magistrates, whipped by the hands of the hangman through the principal streets of the city, and banished under the usual certification. Although apparently not above 20 years of age, the punishment seemed not to affect him. He was not above 3 hours out of prison till he was recommitted for stealing some children's clothes which were drying at the north end of the town. A boy was committed to prison the same day for picking pockets in the crowd while Johnson was being whipped. So it's quite an interesting insight, that one, because it brings up the debate. Obviously, does corporal punishment deter? And obviously in this case, well, with Mr. Johnson, obviously it didn't. I mean, not only was he whipped, but he was marched through the streets while being whipped, then sent on to prison, and later released. And within a few hours he was rearrested after reoffending. And while this public spectacle of whipping was going on, a young boy was dipping the pockets of the onlookers. So yeah, obviously in that case, there wasn't much deterring going on, but quite an interesting article. So obviously, as well as the public whippings, public executions were still quite commonplace. Mainly by hanging, and of course you had to have a town executioner. There had to be somebody there to do the job. And I came across a job advert for such a position, and it's quite an interesting and gives an insight into the character of the person they were looking for. And it goes: wanted for the city of Glasgow, an executioner. The bad character of the person who last held the office, having brought upon it a degree of discredit which it by no means deserves, the magistrates have determined to accept of none but a sober, well-behaved man. The perks are considerable. Applications will be received by the Lord Provost or either of the town clerks. So it's quite a nice little job advert, that, and it did get me thinking. I mean, bad enough having to go and face death by the hangman's noose, but going there wondering if the hangman himself has been out in the town before, the night before, is he suffering from a really bad hangover? If that was the case, then bad enough being hanged, but this is not going to go well. It's not going to be a swift death, that's for sure, if the executioner himself is suffering. So I like how in the advert it kind of nods to that, of the high morals of the person applying for the job, and most importantly, of course, of them being sober. Also, a little mention of the perks of the job, which I'm guessing would be quite a nice salary, a certain position within the town, as it was quite a prestigious position to have, being the town executioner. This advert was taken from a book called The Glasgow Past and Present, which was in the Mitchell library. So yeah, so fascinating little insight there. I'm smoking the Stockholm pipe tonight, and in the bowl I have the Cult Blood Red Moon. It's an aromatic tobacco. Kind of chatting quite a lot instead of puffing, which is having to relight there. As I said, it's an aromatic. Hints of cherry, some chocolate. The tobacco itself is a cure-fired Cavendish with Virginia and Burley. I say I've had it a couple of bowls before, really nice. I love the flavours, and the jar note itself. You can really smell that cherry coming through, which is really nice. Looking at the tobaccos I've collected, as I'm just starting with pipes, I seem to be more leaning towards the aromatics. So for that reason, I'm going to stick with this pipe for aromatics, as well as the 2 cobs that I have, and use my other pipe for other tobaccos, which means at some point I'm going to have to invest in another pipe, which seems a good excuse as any. So I'm going to finish this little video on this another nice little article, because we can't talk about villainy in the law from the 1800s without, of course, mentioning the body snatchers. And this is a great article from the Glasgow Herald, which is still up and running today, and it dates from the 11th of September 1829. It's actually written really well, so I hope I can give it justice as I read it to you now. On Wednesday night, about 8 o'clock, a fellow hired a cab at the cross and told the coachman to drive to Little Govan. On the way, they halted to take in another person whom the individual who engaged the cab described as his servant. When the party got about a quarter of a mile past Gorbals churchyard, the coachman was directed to drive up a by-road, where he observed 3 or 4 fellows with shovels over their shoulders. When the servant inside was ordered by his pretended master to go and fetch his luggage, in short time the luggage, a large well-filled sack, was brought and thrown into the cab, when the driver was ordered to push back again to town with all possible dispatch. As no particular instructions had been given with regard to the place where the gentleman wished to be set down, and the driver had already been thinking in his own mind with regard to the characters of these customers and, more importantly, the contents of the bag, he thought he could do no better than drive the party straight to the police office. No sooner had he come to his conclusion than smack went the whip and round went the wheels, and he ne'er halted until challenged by Captain Graham at the corner of Bell Street for furious driving. The coach driver, however, was now become big and anxious with regard to his fate of his adventures. Merely called out to the captain to follow if he pleased, as he had 2 gentlemen inside most anxious to see him on a particular business at the office, and on he went to Albion Street. But unfortunately one of the miscreants contrived to make his escape before the driver could possibly descend, and the other, who proved to be a fellow of the name of Bell, a well-known body snatcher and associate in trade of Gills and McCluckley, was seized by the collar when endeavouring to follow his companion. The contents of the sack proved to be the bodies of a male and female, one of which, to all appearances, had been in the grave for 3 or 4 weeks. As the coachman had not any hire from the vagabonds, Bailey Gray The sitting magistrate ordered him to be paid from the police funds for the good behaviour which he displayed in the affair. Well, a nice little ending, especially for the coachman. At least he got his fare. And yeah, it's good to end on a body snatching story, as it was quite rife in the times in Glasgow and especially Edinburgh. And of course, we all know the legend of Burke and Hare. So yeah, so a nice little tale to finish on. Hope you enjoyed it. This may be something I might look again in the future. Maybe I might look out some really good Scottish ghost stories that could be of interest. If you think it would be, then please drop me a little comment, or if there's anything you think I might have an interest in reading myself, then yeah, I'd be grateful to hear about that as well. So yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this little night of tales, and until the next episode, then my name's Shearer. Enjoy your smokes.